5:19. We'll be having a sip on 5:19, which is about karma. And we're going to have one on June 10th, and that is a Monday night at 6 p.m. instead of a Sunday. And we're going to be talking about what is spiritual abuse, how to recognize spiritual abuse, and what to do about it. So those are the next three we have booked for April, May, and June. Sam will also put a link in the chat for people about where they can go and follow us on the Facebook page. And you can also sign up at kevinrossemery.com to be on the mailing list so that you would also be notified. Again, we're going to go ahead and get started. We are recording. Remember, if you don't want to be on the recording, you can just chat your question in. So I'm going to start with Reverend Nancy Smith of Angelscapes. She will give you talk to you a little bit about who she is and where she comes in from talking about soul contracts, tell you a little bit about soul contracts, and then after her, we will move on to Reverend Raina Wilson. Nancy.
Hi. So I'm Nancy Smith of angelscapes.net. I'm a reverend from the spiritualist tradition. I do Akashic record work. I also do mediumship work and spirit art work. And my conversation with you about soul contracts today comes from your soul, comes from the Akashic records work that I do. And soul contract work to me is a nice big umbrella for things that you've agreed to do that are wrapped up in the belief systems that you have now. And sometimes the belief systems that you have now come from a soul agreements or soul experiences in past lives or ancestral lives or any number of places, but they're not authentically yours. And I have in my tradition, my protocols of recognizing what isn't working in your life now, what would you like to have happen in your life instead? And then we go into your soul book through journeys and we look at the metaphorically and symbolically, we look at your soul contracts and we see what's there. We see how this contracted or agreement is affecting you, how it's living in your life right now, and what you can do to clear it and bring in your best life possible. So that's where does soul contracts come from? All kinds of places. Like I said, ancestral, they can come in from past lives. And they could be part of your soul group where your soul's here to learn and grow. And our souls are developing on the higher side as well. So we could maybe some of your soul's experience could hold a contract that's influencing you now in this lifetime. And that's my thoughts on soul contract.
Okay. So for the new people that just signed in, we are recording this because we do put it out for other people to watch. If you don't want to have your face or name on the recording, you can simply chat your question when we're taking questions, and then your question will be read out loud and we will get an answer for you. Just so you know. And Nancy, if you want to, in the chat to everyone, put where they can reach you. Reverend Raina Wilson, or Tanaya.
Hi there. Yes, thanks. Hi, I'm Raina Wilson. I'm a shamanic spiritual guide, multidimensional energy worker, embodiment coach on this topic of soul contract. Hello? Oh, okay. What I have to share is, these are agreements that provide sort of a guideline for what you will experience in your life. There's also, in terms of like events and occurrences as well as relationships. They're generally for, your growth in healing and evolution, your spiritual evolution. It can be prearranged, predetermined, as well as there can be times when there might be spontaneous as well. let's see, yeah, they might originate from your soul or through karmic energies with another soul, or they might come from soulmate connections where you've gotten together to determine, yeah, how are we going to support each other in this next life? Or maybe it might be around growth and learning or healing and support. It might be with energies of nature and even our animal, companions, or celestial in nature. They could be an ongoing type of agreement, or it might be a synchronistic experiential type of agreement. So one might be able to notice, the subtle influence of agreement happening in one's over the span of the time of their lifetime, right? It'll be, they might notice and become aware of certain patterns appearing in terms of certain callings and opportunities opening to those callings, and how they respond to it. Is it like there is a pull to it, or is there a resistance that comes up? And that's another kind of pattern. And that might indicate either a growth area or a healing area, or it might indicate maybe that might not work. It's maybe time to discontinue that agreement. Yes, and so there are ways to work with this sort of energy level of, just through meditation, through energy work, or through ceremonial type work, to just learn to sort of identify what those agreements might be in your life, and discern, is it supporting in my growth, or is it an indication of some kind of obstacle that keeps appearing? Is there a karmic, negative karmic energy here that needs to be broken, a pattern that needs to be broken? And so you can discern if you want to rewrite these agreements, or even just tear it up altogether. But mostly it's about empowering yourself in your life journey. And specifically for me, in my experience, there's a specific sort of soul contract that I have personal experience with, but also I'm coming up more and more with people who have experience with this, but it's not well known with a lot of practitioners out there. And so it's just an awareness thing. It's so the type of contract is or soul agreement is around the walk-in experience, which is where another soul will take the place of a natal soul, and that's an agreement, and that's for also the benefit of soul growth as well. So that will be a beneficial process between both souls, where sometimes the two spirits can come together and prearrange this and have, and maybe one spirit might not need to come back. They've been through enough incarnation cycles, but they're going to come down and sort of be an act of service to prepare the human body experience for the walk-in to come in and take the experience, and in exchange that the walk-in will take up the unfinished tasks that come up from being that. Or it might be an experience of a person signs up for something and it winds up being a totally different experience than they originally planned for, and they just don't have the resources in the moment as they're going through it to finish the tasks. And so that might prompt a type of exchange, or it might be a type of exchange of just braiding a higher vibrational being, or even of the higher self, into one's experience. And it's all for healing and growth. And typically this is a walk-in, just they have a mission to come in, but they need to have their soul memory intact as much as possible, as well as not having to step down their vibration as much as if they would have come through the birth experience. And so it's a very shamanic expression of a life path as well, because one has to become deeply human in that kind of experience in order to expand the consciousness and the vibrational levels of whatever their mission is in the healing of, resolving the previous souls, the natal souls, unfinished tasks, as well as then taking up their own as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, again, a couple of things that I usually say at the beginning, and I didn't because we had people coming in, and I want to just make this clear. We are recording. If you don't want to be on the recording, you can just chat your question in, and you won't be on the recording. We are recording because we share this. The second thing I always like to say at the SIP panels are we choose, we have three very different perspectives, and there are places where we agree, and there are places where we have a very different perspective on something. At a SIP event, it's very important to know nobody's wrong. Because Raina or Nancy or I say something and it sounds like it might be opposite than what one of the others of them said, we're not teaching a workshop or class. We haven't prepared our materials. We're not saying this is where we're in alignment. In fact, the beauty of SIP is you may hear Nancy say one thing, Raina may have a different perspective, I have a third perspective, and you get to decide which perspective resonates to you. And it doesn't make the other two invalid. And in fact, sometimes perspectives over our soul's journey in a lifetime will change, where one of our perspectives might be perfect for you in your 20s, and a different perspective may come to you in your 40s. And it's about us all evolving as people and as souls. And through that evolution, we will get presented the right things as we go along. So I'm going to say consciously recognized the fulfilling of my first soul contract when I was 4, and I got fulfilled with my grandmother, who talked to me about being psychic, setting me up that even though I came in to have a very difficult childhood, the fact that I was really, really psychic, I never doubted, because she came in and told me that I had a gift, and it was a gift from God. Her and I had a soul contract. She had a contract to help me be able to ground into my psychic abilities at a very young age. And by doing that, even though, and she said, people will tell you that it's wrong or it's bad or they don't believe you, what happened was I kept on going back to, I believe my grandmother. I believe Grammy, right? Have we all had a grandmother that we were like, yeah, they know what they're doing. Most everybody else doesn't. And so this helped me define and be a fairly open psychic child, even though it drove the adults crazy. And they kept on wanting to take it away from me, and I wouldn't let it go. But that's an example to me of a soul contract. She had contracted with me to give me that foundation and base, so I wouldn't be one of these people who 30 years later are going, am I psychic? I don't know. I think I might be psychic. I'm not sure. No, never a question, never an issue. So she set that up. So that to me is an example of a soul contract personally out of my own life that was very clear to me as a soul contract. I look at soul contracts, I sometimes say I am the most practical, pragmatic, spiritual person you will ever meet. And so when I look at soul contracts, they're a contract. Two souls have agreed to do something. They may agree to come in and support each other. I mean, a soul contract can be everything of like, I am going to be your go-to ride or die person for your whole life, or for the last half of your life, or this part of your life. So when everything's going bad, I'm going to walk in your life, and you're going to have one person that believes in you, and that's what's going to get you through. Or it could be, you could have a soul contract with somebody you shared a past life with that we really screwed this up last time. We didn't get what we were supposed to get out of it. So we're going to come back and we're going to switch roles up, and we're going to figure out if maybe we can do it differently this time. One thing I want to make sure, I want to say that is one of my, I'm going to say it is one of my big complaints that I know has happened in the spiritual community, frankly, because I've had to clean up the mess, is somebody says, oh, you have a soul contract, so you have to let this person treat you badly, or you have to support them, or you can't, you have a soul contract. There is no soul contract out there that says you are here to be abused. You may have a soul experience of having to be abused so that you can rise like the phoenix from the abuse and reclaim your power, and maybe even be a healer and go out there and help a ton of other people who share some energy with the same kind of abuse you had, and you're here to be their torchbearer. But part of that is dumping whoever is abusing you. It's not staying with them. And yet I have had people that have come to me and said, well, I want to leave my marriage, but I was told I've had 2 or 3 psychics tell me that, I was really bad to them in the last lifetime, so I just have to put up with it. Bullshit. That's a spiritual word, by the way. Because it depends on how you use them. They're all spiritual words, aren't they? So I want to call that out really clearly. And so with soul contracts, we can make them before we come in. We can make them as we go along. We can choose to shift. To me, when a soul contract is complete, doesn't mean the relationship is complete, but the something you came in to do is complete. But you might have that person for the whole rest of your life in your circle. They may still be somebody that you lean on. Now, the other thing I want to guarantee you, and I have seen this is something I have done in my work. And the first time I ever saw it, I had a huge headache, I was like, whoa, I looked at all of what the person came in to do in a whole lifetime, that beautiful, this is what I'm here to do. And then I looked at all the places where they went from what they were supposed to do. And it looked like it was like my 2 kittens took a ball of yarn and spread it all over the house and twisted it up with their claws. All of the opportunities got missed. And there are little soul contracts and there are big soul contracts. Just like we have contracts that are minor contracts we sign all the time, we never read, with our credit card company, with our cable company. And then there are big, huge contracts where we read every word. It's all legalese. We don't understand it, but we still read it. And so we have big, huge contracts of like, we're in here to do this or be here for each other or to do that. And again, they can cycle out. But the other side of it is that we have a lot of little contracts that can be somebody comes in and just says, I'm just going to be here at some point when you're veering off path, and I'm just going to bang you a little and put you back on path. A soul contract can be as little as the person who says something, and we all hear all of these stories. We see them on social media and Facebook, all the places of, the person who was getting ready to kill themselves and somebody came and said a kind word, or a little child said something. And I'm not doubting them. And those happen. Those all can be little soul contracts. The contract came together, met. You'll never see the person again. You can't tell me what their name is. You might not remember what they look like, but they shifted your life. They came in and they did that. Also, in that like yarn ball I talked about, we have those contracts which go invalid, that cannot be achieved with that person. Now, I want you to delineate in your head the difference between a soul contract and something you have come in here to do, to discover, to become, I am going to go back to my earlier example. Like, I have come here and have chosen experiences which allowed me to discover what it was like to be an abused person. But I am here to overcome abuse, to become empowered, and to be a torchbearer and show the way to other people out of the darkness. This is what it is. Along there, early on, maybe some spiritual teacher or some counselor, somebody was supposed to come along and give you something, and they blew their timing. Or you made a bad free will choice and you blew the opportunity to meet them. Could go either way. Your goal to do that is still valid, and you will still do it. Maybe the person that was going to do that with you even might have been from a past life. But in case you guys have never heard of it, there's this little thing, this little fly in the ointment called free will. Anybody heard of it? Right? Right? We can make some really sucky free will choices. Okay? And our free will choices will get us killed before our time, will get us in the wrong place, will get us with the wrong person. And that's what I was talking about, that ball of yarn of what we came in to do versus where we are now. And that rushing around of sometimes people from the other side or even on this side. And our higher soul level will start to say, hey, you know, I can come in and maybe play this role for you. I wasn't planning on it, but I could try to do that. Great. If you do that, I'll play. I mean, you know, it's going back and forth. It's kind of like haggling at a market. Hey, I'll do this for you and you can do that for me or whatever. Or sometimes it's just an act of grace. I'll come in and do it. So I'm kind of putting all of that in, that soul contracts have a lot of complexity. And I do want to say that I know that Nancy has to leave a little early, but Raider and I will continue to be here for questions. So there's a whole lot more I could say. I know there was a whole lot more Nancy could have said or Raina, but we also wanted to run it into questions because sometimes we find that you guys, us answering your questions, can really take the whole rest of it. There's just a lot of different things about soul contracts. One of the things is, that, you know, like you could soul contract a walk-in, like Raina talked about. You could just be done with your body and somebody could come and say, hey, I made a bad free will choice and I got bopped out of the earth before I finished what I did. And your body is still perfectly good and you're done with it. Can you just like go in a coma and I'll hop in and like kind of take it over afterwards and finish out my things? And that can be created, you know, like, oh, hey, I see you're getting ready to like die because you that's what you did do. You were going to die at this age. You were going to be done. You're done. Hey, can I borrow that suit of clothing? I think it will look good on me. I can make it work. I can wear it places. I got stuff to do. I maybe only need it for 5 years. So there's a lot of stuff there if you really want to think about it. But I wanted to throw that in since Raina brought walk-ins in, is that there is that very much go into coma, wake up, somebody else. It was really negotiated, kind of, sort of, simply because there was still more life in the body and the other person had checked out early or something, or came in to do one or two things. I could talk faster, but none of you would understand me. So I'm going to turn it to questions now, because I want to make sure that you guys get to ask your questions, especially if you specifically wanted to ask a question of Nancy, though all of our panelists answer all of the questions if we want to. You know, if we feel like we have something to say, we'll all weigh in on a question, but I want to make sure people get a chance, since Nancy is going to have to leave a little early to be able to get Nancy's wisdom on some of your questions. So, Sam is not our regular moderator. She's stopped in today. Do you want to do the questions or you want me to do them? It's your choice. I will put my contact in chat as well, so you guys know.
Yeah, there's a question in there. I can read it.
Yep, go ahead.
All right. The question is from Sharon. How do you get out of a soul contract when you believe you fulfilled the terms of the agreement? Can you simply leave?
Yeah, I can answer that, Kevin. And Raina, are you good with that?
I'll weigh in afterwards. Go ahead.
So getting out of a soul contract can be as simple as, you know, I'm not doing this anymore, but we need to change behavior patterns. We need to dig a little bit deeper. And in my book, Divine Love Affair and Akashic Journey, I have a whole chapter on protocols to get out of your soul contracts, prayers, and different things. First of all, I'm going to make a story up. If you're so I went through a divorce. You know, I was married twice, and I had the guy that I had kids with. I went through a divorce, but I couldn't leave him behind, and I was really struggling with that. And there were a lot of issues. So I went to this meditation, to like my wall of belief systems, and in that wall, in that soul book, there was a contract in there about my marriage, but there was another contract in there about the archetypical beliefs that I had about the marriage. So in order to get out of that agreement, I went through the divorce and the therapy and the lawyers and all that stuff. but then I had to also go through and see where my belief systems were, where my energetic connections and contraptions were holding it in place, and also if there were any disincarnate beings that were really feeding off of me being in that agreement, in that contract. So you can simply leave, yes. However, sometimes there are things with the contracts that are a little bit more metaphysical that are holding you into place. And the most direct thing that holds a contract into place is a behavior and a belief system that, okay, so I don't want to, you have not you, but I had a yucky husband or a difficult father, and you have a bonded with your dad or with your husband, and you have to face your part of the deal. What's your side of the street in terms of what did you agree with to come into this relationship? So say it's a father who's an alcoholic, you may step into Al-Anon or you may step into therapy to say, I have this reactionary behavior that I'm doing. I don't want to do it anymore. So in breaking the soul contract, I'm letting dad go. He's going to go on his own way and he's going to make all these mistakes, but I'm not responsible for him. I'm only responsible for me. And that is changing your soul contract with your father. However, your soul agreement or your soul's pathway and plan may be for you to stand on your own 2 feet and to find your own voice and to understand who you are as an authentic person. And that could be where your soul's path is. A lot of times we have soul agreements where it was a really bad phone call one day where we heard a message and we misconstrued it. We misunderstood it. A lot of times when people have visions of what they have to do, and so they go out missions in life, and I feel like you missed a word on what it is you were supposed to do. So we got to first go back and own the initial connection, whether it's courting or belief structures or something from a past life. Somebody from a past life who you promised you'd always, always, always be with for the rest of eternity. So, and there this person shows up in your lifetime that you made this eternity promise to, and they're the exactly opposite person that you would be associating with in this lifetime for what you're learning. And you may have to release that contract and let that person go, and or release your behavior around that contract. We had one was working with a woman with past lives, and she was really struggling with her husband, really struggling with it, but she didn't want to leave him. And so we did a couple of past lives where we looked at what their connections were from past lives, and it was really clear that he treated her pretty badly in a past life, and in this life he's trying to balance the scales and bring her back to a better place in her life, which he was doing, but he was still treating her really badly. So he was this wasn't really working for her. So she had to kind of own her side of the behavior, which was she was staying in a relationship thinking that she couldn't provide for herself financially. She was staying in the relationship with a person who wasn't treating her well. So her side of the road was, I need to figure out how to get a job, how to understand money in my life. She needed to really see that she was she had skills that she needed to develop that she was kind of now wanting to develop because it was easy not to develop them while she was married to him. Do you see what I'm saying? I wish it was simply leave the agreement, but sometimes it's more complicated than that. So thanks for asking that really good question.
Raina, do you have anything you want to weigh in on that question? Unmute if you do.
Sorry, the screens are flying everywhere. I was trying to get it all to respond. Thank you. Yes, Sharon, thank you for your question. And I'll answer from a shamanic and somatic point of view. And somatic, I mean, an embodied type of view where it includes body consciousness as well, awareness of one's felt experience as well. And so I come first to you can be empowered and how to follow a path of becoming grounded in your empowerment. And so that will be a weaving of awareness and energy and understanding your internal felt experience and what you need, right? And so if you feel like there's still energetic entanglements with regard to the relationship and contract, but you feel on your side you fulfilled the agreement, right? As in your question. If there are still feelings of sort of having sort of a cord connection there, one of the things is somatically how to ground support for, and this is what grounding is becoming internally supported. And if wherever we can't support ourselves internally, we reach for support for, you know, people who can help us be with the energy and move through the energy and cycle it out rather than recycle it, right? And so finding supportive relationship. And so shamanically, there could be, as I mentioned before, like there's meditation. You could dream it up essentially, or you could follow like, if you feel called to a specific sort of ceremony or tradition. But there's you know, through the meditative space or through energy work or through ceremonial work, there's ways to help your body start to align to the energy that the connection is no longer, right? And you know, when it comes to the idea of cord cutting, I don't really like that approach, you know, just chopping it off, because the roots are still in you, right? And so the idea is how to change your own body energy, which includes the vibrations, the vibrational aspect, and the magnetic aspect, your aura, the emotional space, how to start to transform your own relationship to yourself that is still in connection there, right? And that no longer, you understand, you have an awareness, you no longer need that connection, or it's no longer supportive to you. How to change your relationship to that tension or whatever the energy is that's holding you in place. And so it's almost like like our body is an expression of root, right? It is our ground. So how do we become a ground that's no longer a place where that cord's roots can survive in our, you know, in our inner soil or inner landscape, if that makes sense. But the thing is to just keep coming around in this sort of like healing spiral, basically, an awareness spiral of expanding and growing and increasing your capacity of tolerant, you know, of holding space for the things that make you uncomfortable. And pretty soon, whatever's coming into your field like a tsunami, you increase your body's capacity to be with it, and becomes more like a ripple in your experience, and until it's just like sort of calm waters. And so it's a process too. So allow process for yourself.
Okay, so I'm going to give this a little, if we haven't talked this to death yet, Sharon, we will. And then after I've given my perspective on this, then Josie will have you unmute and ask your question. So I look at it, soul contracts to me either end up unfulfilled and you walk away, and what happens is the other person doesn't do their part. Like you know, and I've seen this happen, especially with, you know, like this couple came in to teach each other something and to get to a place. And originally they thought they were going to get to this place and have a happily ever after, so to speak, relationship. That was the original plan. But one of them did the work and one of them made a ton of bad free will choices. And there's a point at which it's, you know, and I've had to say to this client, this soul contract with this person is no longer achievable. Like it's expired. It's gone out of date. There was something that you had to do or they had to do. You didn't do it and it's expired. It's like sour milk, dump it down your sink. Okay, you just have to let it go. But also I find in the journeying through soul contracts that like all of the things that, you know, we could do to release them are actually part of the soul contract, because we learn a new skill, we discover something, we discover a past life. Like all of that was actually in our trying to dissolve the soul contract. I look at it as we're fulfilling it. It sent us on a journey of self-discovery and growth, and we learned all these great things, and we got to this place where we were no longer viable to be in the contract, or the contract was completed. And so it was completed. So it just goes away. And so we have unfulfilled contracts for all sorts of reasons. We have completed contracts and we don't even know that we've completed them. And when I look at contracts that came out of past lives, it's because that past life work has to be done. And you become someone different because the past life work was done. Well, you're just fulfilling the contract because you got that information, you evolved and became a new person, you found a hidden belief system. You know, I do a lot of like inner child work and do a lot of, you know, work around these areas of what did we come up with, what did we come in, or what was put into our subconscious that we don't even realize is there. And a lot of times I call them the big lies. What were the big lies? Now, nobody knew they were telling us lies. Maybe our priest or our minister or our parents or our teacher didn't know they were telling us big lies. They thought they were truths, but they were the big lies. And we're living those, and then we become disempowered in our life because the big lies were not in our favor. They limit us. They tell us what we can and can't do, or who we are and who we're not, and all of that stuff. And anything that helps us discover the big lie and correct it to our own soul's truth of who we are in this lifetime, which is not a one size truth fits all. This is not a caftan from Walmart. Okay? This is a very unique, individual weaving together of who you came in. In my book, Combing the Mirror and Other Steps in Your Spiritual Path, you know, it's like all of our spiritual paths are so unique. They're like these unique paths that have all these little pieces in it. And those soul contracts are part of those pieces, and they can take us into past lives, and they can take us into what we've come here to do and who we're here to become. So I kind of sort of, and this is one of those, I think I'm probably a little to the side to some point from maybe where Raina and Nancy are. I'm like, you don't leave a contract per se, it ends, it expired. It just isn't valid anymore. And then you have to look at what were my belief systems that kept me there. What, you know, and even that is in some ways what the soul contract was probably set up to do, was for you to do a deeper dive and a self-examination. So anyways, Joe, why don't you go ahead and come off mute? And I know you've got a question. If people have a question and they want to ask it, and you don't want to chat it, just let us know in chat, or I think there's a function where you can raise your hand, and you just raise your hand and we'll see that you've raised your hand and we'll call on you. Joe, are you still there?
Yep, I'm here. Oh, I knew my dog was going to do that when I talked. Sorry about that. Can you hear me? Yes. So, a funny thing, this is my first time here, and I've had forgotten about this. And this morning was railing against what could be a soul contract coming up to tomorrow. So, a good timing. So I figured I better ask this now. My wife and I have been empty nesters for about 6 months, and one child is going to be coming back as early as tomorrow, and we've been out of touch with them for quite a while. And honestly, I don't even know what, if anything, my life mission is, because to be honest, things have gone rather smoothly, and the only times things in my life don't go smoothly is when I try to do something. It seems like as long as I'm not pushing anything, things go fine. So, but anyway, again, empty nests for a few months, and kind of gotten set and stayed in my ways. And now one's again coming back, and I got this weird intuition. Hopefully I'm wrong, that the whole point of this is because I'm gonna have to just watch as he spirals down. You know, because I had no control over him when he was a child, and definitely don't have any kind of control that I know of now that he's an adult. So I'm just wondering if you have, if any thoughts popped into your heads as I'm saying that, but so, and does that even, is that even a question? Does it make sense? Go ahead.
We'll ferret something out of there, Joe. Don't worry. I got confidence in my fellow panelists. Nancy, I'm going to start with you. If you would like to weigh in on this, obviously it's always an option.
Sure. Joe, it's crazy that it's a very good question. I totally get what you're saying, because you fulfilled, I remember I talked about, we have the archetypical agreement. You were the archetypical father. He was the archetypical child, and he had a certain personality. And he has a certain things that he's here to learn and grow with in his own personal development. And parents are funny, because sometimes we can help our kids, and sometimes we're just modeling certain behaviors, and sometimes we and I hope I wasn't one of those parents, will give our kids certain trauma that forces them to learn something that their soul really wants them to wrap their heads around and figure out. With your son coming back, and this is a general stroke, because I think I'd have to work with you more personally to get down to the nitty-gritty. There's something that he's coming back for. And so to look at it on lots of different levels. First of all, the soul level, what is it that you want to learn from him from a soul's point of view? And what is it that he needs to learn from you and your wife from a soul point of view? So there's that. And then there's the personal point of view is he's struggling. I'm making this up because I don't really know. He's struggling, can't make ends meet, can't seem to keep a roof over his head. He needs help with that. And is this something you can help him with? And what are you learning in your relationship with him? And what's logistically possible? And then there's agreeing to do something that's really not good for you, for either one of you, or agreeing to do something that's really good for you, that's going to take you to another place in your life that you wouldn't have gone to if this situation hadn't occurred. So what are those? So where are you in any of those levels? And maybe you're a little bit on each level. So that's not really answering your question, but it's giving you places to consider and think about. I wouldn't be surprised if you did a session with somebody or me and found out that you have a past life thing with your son that needs to be kind of rectified or worked out or worked through. And I want to reiterate Kevin's statement at the beginning. We could have soul agreements with people. We have soul appointment with them. The soul contract can be echoing a behavior that needs to shift so that we can actually finish the appointment. But we're not here to be taken advantage of or abused by another person. And that needs to be clarified and cleaned up. And so I would say to you, look at these different levels that I articulated and see where on earth is this dynamic happening between me and my son. You said when you work too hard on things don't go as well as if you just let them flow. So there may be something that your son's bringing to your attention of, now you need to work on this, even though you have to struggle through it. Now you need to look at this issue and make a stand on it, even though it may feel awkward, or I'm just making that up. So he's bringing home to you something that you've been avoiding taking care of. Who knows what it is, but there's some introspection definitely in having an adult child return back home. And especially since sounds like you were a tiny bit estranged. What was the estrangement? What is, that kind of thing. So there's no real good answer to give you on a personal level, unless we're working one-on-one with somebody. But on a larger level, I would look at all 4 of these or 5 of these levels to see what's really going on for you, so that you aren't in a situation of no resolve. So that you can keep it positive and keep it moving for all of you, your wife, your son, in a good direction that is soulful, that is growth. And that's my thoughts on that. I've listened to all the panelists talking, and all these things pop into my head, and then when I start talking, what was that thing I wanted to mention? But there's a lot of different things. There's soul contracts, there's soul appointments, there's agreements that from soul to soul that you want to work with, but you're not necessarily but you think you're contracted to have a certain behavior towards it, but you're really not. So there's a lot of layers to this. I'll stop talking now. Let somebody else say something.
Raina, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks, Joe. These are some reflections that came to me as I was hearing, your description of and your question. First was this idea of, oh, we're entering the mystery. We're going to have to learn to walk with the mystery because we've had a certain amount of maybe, I don't know, predictability might be, or homeostasis in our lives, right? And so then the next thing that comes to me is a little bit around, how gaining skills around walking into the unknown. And then I hear, okay, someone who's potentially crisis driven or chaotic driven is now going to enter the life. And so that sounds like, I mean, it's interesting not to put a tone on like your experience, but the energy that comes up for me is like, ooh, this is kind of exciting. Like, is there a little bit of excitement that's being drawn into your life to sort of stir things up, right? That things that may have settled that were really meant to flow out of your life energetically, right? And not stay sort of kind of cycling in your energy. And so it feels like an empowerment journey and really, I look at this, as a question that of what's going to support you the most, right? What is the mirror for you to have this come around into your life again from a long time ago? And you name a sort of habit of letting things flow around you. But how about what would it be like to learn in relationship, to have a self in relationship with another, right? And I mean, I feel about circumstances in my own life with difficult people, and also as a parent with someone who's very strong-willed, right? And learning that, sort of like, for, I'll share a personal experience. Like, I learned that stepping out of her way was the mothering she needed in order for her to become empowered in her own stuff. And so I could provide like guide rails, right? And catch where there's support and where they're, she's open for support, and it's relating to her in a different way than when she was a child as well. Because, now we're both adults, right? And so you also now, like, I think in the society, a lot of parents don't really realize that they need to change when their child becomes adults. That is now an adult-adult relationship, not a parent-child or adult-child relationship. And so they have their own journey and, skills to learn on their own too, and whether they are going to cooperate or, in a relationship that's respectful, and or not, that's also a reflection to the self, like, okay, where are my edges, right? And where can I be a someone who's also like part of the flow, but not having life flow around me, but I am the flow, right? So becoming grounded in your own personhood and energy and spiritual experience could be a very beautiful model for, your son too. Even if it's not like, telling him what to do or, but really it's about setting, what's going to work for you in your home space, right? If that makes sense.
It does. Thanks.
So I'm gonna, as you've all figured out how this goes now, we all weigh in and we cross places and we divert places. So when I've done this kind of work in multi-generational in my practice, and I've done it from having the elderly parent move in with you, or the child who, for whatever reason, couldn't make it on their own. And there's that line, it can go both ways. The very first thing I'm going to recommend is you and your wife, and if you feel like there is going to be places where there may be sharp edges between the two of you on how this should unfold or be handled or dealt with, that's when you might want to think of whether it's going with somebody like Nancy, Raina, or myself. Bring in a third party for you and your wife to make sure you are unified in how you're going to deal with this child moving in. This is not just you. And you can do all you want. And if your wife is going in an opposite direction, creating a different set of mixed messages, this child will fall right in the middle, back to the good old days of manipulating mommy against daddy to get their way. And I don't know that that ever happened, but it's not uncommon. So first of all, you and your wife have to have a unified front of what does this mean? What are the rules? What are the expectations? And you have a right to set the expectations that you need to. I always say we give, but you know, and this has been referred to by both of my co-panelists, which is, you know, I always like to say it, we give birth to our unresolved issues and we call them children. We chose those children, they chose us. It is a back and forth, but sometimes it is about us maybe breaking antiquated sense of guilt or obligation, or what things have to mean, or if I make this decision, if I set boundaries, but I let them run over the boundaries because I can't enforce them, which is a whole nightmare all of its own. If you set a boundary, it's you've got to agree to set it, and it's got to, and this child has got to come hard against the boundary, and it's got to be clear what's going to happen if that boundary is crossed. There is also, again, when I've maneuvered these situations, is if you're going to come and live with us, we as a family are going to engage in some kind of relationship, whether it's traditional therapy or the catalyst work that I do, or the work Nancy does, or the work Raina does. But you need somebody to come in that is also going to meet with the three of you to do that. And they don't have an option. They have to come if they want to stay living in the house. They have to be part of the solution of making it work. And you get to role model. I don't have all the answers. I'm not afraid for asking for help. And I'm willing to even look at my own stuff and hear where maybe I co-created somewhere along the way, no matter how unintentionally, the situation that may be affecting you now. Was I too, you know, all I can think of is the song out of Mame. Because, you know, everything you need to know about life, you can learn from a Broadway musical. It's actually a class I teach. You know, did I push a little hard? Was I there too much? Was I not there enough? That's a whole song about what happens when your child not becomes the child that you want them to be. It's a great song. If you guys haven't heard it and your parents, you should listen. You should look it up. But I think it's very important that the two of you have to put things in place. You have to have agreed upon expectations for them. You need to involve somebody else, again, whether you want to do it in a more new age, metaphysical, spiritual way. Like that's our gig here. I'm a doctor, but I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but this is the kind of work I do, as well as the other two get into this, their own variation of it. But find somebody, create it, make it mandatory. Part of your condition of living here is to participate in family healing. And I don't know. I mean, I know because there's a lot of reasons why he could be why he is. But I know a lot of times when I've been called in or worked with this, it's because ADD or ADHD is an issue, because I have several books out on it, and I've worked with this for 24 years, the ADD and the ADHD stuff. So that's different than if I work with somebody where addiction is the issue. I mean, it's like figuring out what their issue is for not getting empowered. But remember, you are going to have to make choices that at times you will be uncomfortable with. Uncomfortable is a sign of growth. Okay, I'm going to take another question, but Nancy, I know you are doing some time limitations. Can you take another question or do you need to get off? You need to unmute, Nancy.
I'll help out with this next question and then I'll bow out, if that's all right.
Okay. So, can you say anything about trauma bonding, betrayal, bonding, and breaking soul contracts? Thank you in advance. The question is from Miss Monica. Nancy will give you the run at it because then I know you have to hop off and then we'll pass it.
Yeah, this is really trauma bonding and betrayal bonding are speak very clearly to belief systems, and sometimes belief systems that have come from past lives or a soul level, like your soul really wants to figure this out. And the trauma bonding or really feeling that kid that got raised by the difficult parents, dysfunctional parenting, leads to dysfunctional relationships in the adult children. And but you feel comfortable with the partner that looks like dad or looks like mom, even though you couldn't wait to get away from home. So you're healing something within yourself, but not by being with the person, by finally recognizing, hey, wait a minute. This is, and being willing to say, this is exactly what I've been working on in my life, and owning it. And so you could break a soul contract with it, but again, I'm going back to working your side of the street, or whoever we're talking about when you feel more comfortable with somebody who exhibits the behavior of the dysfunctional parent in your life, you have to make the choice. You have to be in charge of not changing the behavior. A lot of times, not a lot of times, sometimes if you change your behavior, the traumatic pattern or the betrayal may change, but mostly not, unless the other person is working on their stuff. Chances are they're not working on their stuff, and your soul is bringing you to that really uncomfortable place to say, okay, can you do this time? And then you'll say, yes, I'll do it. Then you do it halfway, and then you meet another person that's kind of better but similar to that same bonding pattern. And so you get to work on another level of it. When you work with soul contract work, if you work with me, what we do is we get to the root of the energetic exchange that you're creating in your life, and what you're recreating in relationships. And we can take a look at taking them apart at a root level, at a core level, what your body actually feels like it needs and has to have it, and it's the worst thing for it. And I'm trying to think of a really good example. It's the subtle energies that you have to work on, not the relationship energies. It's the subtle energies within you to recognize what is the best potential for this relationship to ever go, or is this as good as it's going to get, and where's my responsibility? Not that I can change the person, but I'm miserable and I need to do something about this. And what am I going to do? And you don't know what to do because you're so locked into the dysfunctional pattern that you can't even recognize it. And you're stuck in a Chinese torture test. And breaking soul contracts can help you see what you're playing with. What are the blocks that you're building with? And when I do soul contract clearing, and I think Kevin and Raina are talking about the same thing. We go into the energetic exchange, or what's stuck in your belief system, what's stuck in your body, energetic energy that keeps referring back to the trauma bonding with the parent, or the constant betrayal from the parent. And that's been stuck for a long time. And recognizing it, opening it up, and allowing the energy to refer to your higher source, refer to Sacred Mother, Sacred Father. And as the energy opens, the wisdom and the integration comes back in a way so you're not recapitulating what you created with your parents. And it's tricky, it's subtle, it takes focus and work. It's worth it because that's where your soul work is. So I have to say, yes, break the contracts, but really the contracts that you're breaking are with yourself and yourself. and what you have decided to, what your soul's decided to take on, and your soul will always help you. One of the aspects in the soul contract work that I do is I call in your healer guides to create a new template within yourself. So you're referring to that template instead of referring to the old template. So you could actually have help changing your behaviors. Old behaviors are comfortable, new behaviors are not. So you doing a new behavior, you feel traumatized, you feel betrayed, you feel out of sorts. So you have to build. I've seen people having to build, I want to say that in a better way, a new relationship with themselves where they're learning how to feel different feelings and trust a new process. So soul contracts are very, very helpful in getting to the root cause and to the roots, the seller of everything. And then if you're breaking the soul contract in sacred space with the help of your soul, with the help of your angels or healer guides, you will make great progress. I've seen people be in therapy for years and then come and do soul work with me, and then they finally make that milestone where they're starting to really break through and into the new behaviors. I hope so. I could talk about this for hours, but I think in a nutshell, that's the best I got for now.
So I'm going to turn it over to Raina in just a second. Nancy, I know you have to go. We're going to see you on April 21st, which is going to be at 6 p.m. instead of 4 p.m. And we're going to be doing karma. I know we're going to be doing what is indigeneity. And we'll talk about a little bit about what that means, because I'm sure some of you have questions, but we're going to not talk about it now. Nancy, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in April. Raina, did you want to comment on the question?
Yes, please. Thank you. Hi, Monica. I really appreciate your question. So I hear about, the trauma bonding and betrayal bonding, and I sense a whole energy of what this kind of experience can be like to be in a relationship like this, and knowing that there is a need to break the soul contract. Been there, walked through it. I approach this from a somatic, shamanic point of view again. And so one of the first things when I see that word trauma, I just want to point out that trauma isn't what's done to us. It's what the impact is to our physiology and our energy body that causes us to reorganize ourselves, that is altered from our natural path, right? And so there'll be a whole layer of body wisdom that's below even our awareness, if we haven't really tuned in to what might be driving like our areas of maybe disempowerment, or how we're navigating, trying our best to navigate difficult relationships that seem to undermine our ability to touch the ground, right? And so one of the important things is to know that this is a process, and the more you can include compassionate kindness to oneself, and acceptance, to what lives within your own experience of discomforts. If, for me, when I'm working with someone through this kind of experience, I'm giving them connection to the ground as much as possible, for them to feel into where their supports might need to come from. And that's like engaging the area of consciousness that's within your body itself. Your body already knows the answer, how to walk through and take it the step into freedom, right? Energetically, there's that knowing that it's a broken contract. It's time to walk away. If it's a sort of like entangled type of relationship where it's not been really possible, and there's sort of grounding that gets taken away as you take a step, then that's calling for need of understanding what messages are arising in the feeling experiences and the energy experiences that arise when you're feeling your own disempowerment, and finding the feeling of power within your powerlessness, right? It's in there. And so the more one can give acceptance to that feeling of, and embracing it, like as if that was your child, right? Feel like your inner child, embracing the powerlessness part and giving that energy part of yourself the support that they needed, that they didn't get, will help transform the energy more and more. It changes your relationship to the tensions there, right? And it starts to reinform your own consciousness, actually, when you start to include your body consciousness and guiding through these sort of identifying what the need is when trouble arises. Like, what did little Monica need when this sort of energy exchange happened before, and calling that support in. And the support could be, you know, maybe imagining someone standing in front of you and saying, stop that, leave her alone, right? And just having that embodied interaction now can reinform your energy body then, right? That's the shamanic part. It's sending the healing back in time. There's a sort of timelessness that happens. And then you can start building up this energy work, and you can actually start to create even a new relationship to the future. And so this is a process of building up a new relationship to the energies from before, bringing it up to consciousness, identifying the needs, calling in the supports, because the needs will indicate what those supports exactly are, right? Whether it's another person, whether it's like an energy exchange from a supportive person, or calling in an archetypical, you know, higher being to stand with you and taking on like their energy, as if you're merging and shapeshifting into them and becoming them. So that's informing your body also on another level to start grounding your power in the powerlessness. And that will start to shift, you know, and give you the ability to one day, you know, every little bit of integration that comes to you, it adds up and it accumulates until one day you're stepping out free, out onto the, you know, sun, right?
So I'm sure everybody's picking up at this point that Nancy Rayner and I have very different styles about how we deal with things. And again, I want to remind everybody, nobody is right or wrong. If you are drawn to one person's description or way of looking at it or seeing it, then that's probably the person that would be the next person in your journey to help you, because you're being called to them. And it doesn't make any one of ours more or less powerful. It just means it's like choosing the one that's calling that is the right energy for you now. I'm going to say a couple of things here. First of all, I would want to know when the trauma happened, when the betrayal happened, because if it happened in your childhood, I deal with it much differently than it happens as an adult. There are people that have actually light, you know, like they have some problems in childhood. We all had some, nobody comes out of childhood without some scrapes. But if suddenly you call that trauma or that betrayal in when you're 30, and you can't even, I don't even know how it happened. Like my parents always were like kind and loving to each other. And I ended up in this abusive, I don't understand how I even got there. I don't know. Well, that's a very different thing to deal with than this is how I watched my parents treat each other, or this is how they treated us. So first of all, I want to delineate, when did the trauma happen? What is the betrayal? And again, I always look at fulfill and release. Don't break. Break is so harsh to me energetically. Every time somebody says break a contract, it's like break a dish. No, no, no. Lean into it, fill it, you know, fulfill the contract, say, what do I need to get out of it? Now I'm done with it. I'm walking away. It doesn't have to be an act of violence, you know, And again, I look at it very differently. I'm not commenting on how Nancy or Raina look on it, or I'm responding to, you said, and break the soul contract. No, fulfill it. Be done with it. Figure out why you made the contract. You know, you added childhood narcissistic parent, then I'm going to go back, and I like to do things through inner child work, because I want you to understand one of our core things is survival. And as a child, we see things differently. And we end up creating our own big lies. Earlier, I talked about the big lies and having to correct the big lies. And some of the biggest lies are lies where our immature, you know, our young mind, our, you know, emotionally developing mind, our maturity, you know, oh, it's my fault that daddy keeps on coming home and get drunk. If I was a better little girl or boy, then they wouldn't have had to have come home and got drunk. It's my fault. That's how kids think. So first of all, if I'm going back into someone's childhood, I always look at what are the inner children and what age did that trauma take, you know, what big lies did you create around yourself, how the world worked, how to be in the world, stuff like this. And then we go back to that point and we bring that child out and talk to that child and heal that child. We correct the big lies. We do the work where that child learns to trust us. And I'm going to say this, when I do the work, the very first thing, because I have people, they'll come to me, I'll pick up that they have so many different, like you have 3 inner children that I can pick up on easily, this age, this age, this age. Usually there's a, oh, that makes sense, or I understand what happened or whatever. And they'll start the process with me and they'll be like, well, when are you going to talk to the child? I said, well, when we correct the adult, because the child ain't going to trust you. The child is going to trust that you can intellectually make the right decisions today, even if you're having a problem with it, even if emotionally it's a struggle for you, you still have to have a certain level of understanding and way of seeing and being it before we can talk to the child. Because I have literally had children go, no, I don't trust you. I'm not going to integrate. You won't take care of me. I'll take care of us. I'm better. Your 8-year-old version says, I'm better at taking care of you than you are. Look at these decisions you made in the last 3 months. How can I trust you? I've had an 8-year-old inner child tell that to a 50-year-old adult. How can I trust you? So we go in and we make sure that you actually have put in the things that you need to put in for you, the adult, to say, hey, I've got this. And I can't have you keep on grabbing the emotional bus and running us off the road because you're triggered. And so we have to heal that. We have to make sure that your bus is actually up to snuff and you're a good driver for the most part, except when you're triggered. And then we have to look back, and then we have to go back and we have to talk to those children, you know, at the ages that they are, and heal them and bring them up and let them become part of the weave of your past. I will say this right up front. One of the things that most absolutely drives me crazy, and it happens because it will come, people will come to me and they say, oh, I did inner child work. I know how to parent my inner child. No, that's not the goal. The goal is never to parent your inner child. It's to heal your inner child so they become part of your past and then grow up within you and become part of your present. We're not here to spend the rest of our lives saying to our 5-year-old, oh, you'll be okay. So I feel you crying and I feel you're upset. No. We want to get rid of it, integrate in it, and have you, as the mature adult, be living in a place where there isn't any anguish, there is no anything. So I don't know if that helped, but that's kind of how I look at it when I look at that stuff. We have a new question. Interesting. What language are soul contracts written in? Do they use written language as we understand it? And this comes from today's moderator. Raina, you want to give that a shot? This ought to be good. Oh.
Oh, cool question. You know, it's interesting. My experience of this is just like just because I operate from all the different kind of clairs, and whatever comes up is the one that's responding to the moment. But they're all different ways of knowing things, right? And so I, symbolically in the dream time, I've been handed scrolls, right? But that's a symbol from the dream time of wisdom and whatever writings. That's how we understand it here on in our incarnated lives. I think that if we put our attention to, I want to understand or know or see the contract, it will be presented to us as if it was written as a language, but I don't believe it's like necessarily written. As we know what writing is, it's just, but it could also come in the forms of like dreamtime symbols as well. And so how do we make meaning of our uncanny experiences that come in, with these special ways of knowing, or like there's a like an impact to the body when there's when we have an uncanny situation, right, or mysterious mystical experience, right, and that calls us with curiosity to draw and understand meaning, right? That's kind of like the mystic path. And so I believe, it's really just energetically, and whatever, and to my mind, when I work, whatever vibration, everything in creation is vibrational, right? It's all always moving. It can be expressed as form, or just sound and light, really, at the basic level. And so taking those basic elements of a certain energy or vibrational energy, we can translate it into whatever different form that has meaning for us, whether it's through clear seeing, clear cognizance, clear sentience, any of the different ways we can understand energy.
I love this question. And I'm going to say it exists in the language we can comprehend when we're ready to hear it, if we're willing. I don't believe it's written in words, but it can show up in words. I don't believe that it's written in colors, but it can show up in colors. It can be written in, I don't believe it's written in symbols, but it can show up in symbols. The soul contract, to me, is an awareness that wherever our brain is capable of identifying and taking it in is how it comes. And sometimes it's how can the guide or mentor, advisor, the Sherpa, whatever you want to call it, that you're working with, if you're not confident that your soul contract can get through your own inner bullshit. There we go. There's that spiritual word. I've used it again. I like it. I think it's right up there with divine and love. Because we come in, I used to see this as we come in this little golden, perfect, almost opalescent ball, and we get dropped on the earth, and there's our first dent when we hit it, and then we get covered in shit, and we get covered in all sorts of stuff, and then we go, oh, what happened? Well, that's called life, baby. And so sometimes we need somebody to clean off the crap and ding out the bumps, or to you embrace that you weren't here to be a perfect circle. You were here to be an octagon. So you've got bumped on all 8 sides, and now you're a perfect octagon because that's what you came in to be. And so when I look at soul contracts and languaging and things like this, if you are not clear enough to interpret them for yourself or to know what's going on, And one of the things, actually, this is a name of a chapter in one of my chapters in Combing the Mirror, which is called You Will Know, which is you will know whatever you need to know whenever you need to know it. That person, that book, that epiphany will be there in perfect timing if you choose to allow it, if you choose to bring it in. That said, for those of you that are on my mailing list, you would have just got the email that I did in, are you living a dream or a nightmare? Because sometimes the nightmare is the dream that we thought we were supposed to live, and we get it and realize, oh, actually, this was never my dream, and now I got it, I hate it. It was my parents' dream. It was society's dream. It was, you know, it was the dream that my Barbie doll gave me when I was 5 and playing with her, and she whispered in my ear, be Barbie and life will be happy. For those of you who have watched the Barbie movie, you'll really appreciate that. But yeah, it's going to come, and how I may get a soul contract for you is just like how I get a past life for you, or I get an inner child, is unique to the way that I work. Raina would get that information uniquely to the way that she works. So would Nancy in absentia, the way that she works. And then our job is to be the interpreter, to put it in a language you can hear. Okay, we are wrapping up. We're not going to take any more questions, though, and I don't have any on the screen. We do want to, again, Raina, you want to start talking, just give them a brief insight of what we're going to be talking about next month, and see if you can do a better job. I know you do a better job at pronouncing the word than I do.
Yes. So April 21st, is that right?
At 6 p.m.
At 6 p.m., we'll be talking about what is indigeneity. And so I guess at its essence, there's a lot that comes in to this, just as we're navigating in this sort of modern Western world we live in. And, however, at the root, I guess we can, at the essence, we can say, how do we humans each connect to our roots, our indigenous ways of being, our indigenous wisdoms, and start to include that in our own wisdoms where our society hasn't really been inclusive of that kind of wisdom.
And we're also going to be looking at indigeneity. Ta-da! Indigeneity from a soul perspective, because we have cellular memory and we have cellular memory. And there's been a lot of conversation and discussion about, especially recently, about being PC and about, not stealing other people's cultures and stuff like that. But then we have to look at the fact that sometimes we come in with such a strong essence in our soul of a culture that we have no blood relationship to. Does that make us invalid? Appropriation of another culture is one thing, but what happens if you're not appropriating, but you're bringing forth from you a culture that you were very steeped in a past life? It happens. Well, where do we do that? So that's going to be our next one. Then May 19th, we're going to be doing karma. And I know that I can almost guarantee there's going to be some perspectives of karma that you have never heard before coming out of the panel. I know Nancy and Raina and I'll be there. Sometimes we have a fourth panelist, so we could have a fourth panelist on either one of those. And then in June, spiritual abuse. It's a hot topic, as it should be. We didn't recognize for a long time just how many people got spiritually abused, whether it's through their traditional religion or whether it was through their pathway to healing and new age spiritual abusers exist everywhere, and you have to recognize if you have been a victim of one. At the top of the chat, you can go like the page, the Facebook page. And all of our postings and stuff like that will be there. We are tentatively scheduled on April 21st that we're going to do it live streaming. So you would actually just come to the Facebook page and be able to hop on and ask your questions there. So that we would be live streaming it on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube. So you could sign into any of those. You have all of our, we have all of our information there. If you want to contact us, we put it all in chat. If you want to get to us, you can also leave a message on the Facebook page and we would get it there as well. And I want to thank you all for coming. This is where you all go off mute and clap, just so you know. You didn't know. I see people clapping, but they're
Fabulous. Fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.
you get what you ask for in life, right? And just, he's asking for applause. Of course, I'm asking for applause.
I think
Recognize-
Zoom mutes applause, but yeah.
Okay. Have a good day.